You are listening to audio from The Table. If you'd like to learn more about our community or donate to this ministry, please visit thetabletx.org.
Hello, Table Podcast listeners. Brett here, and our message this week is coming to you a little bit different. We needed the live version because Eric Stinnerson shared his story, and it's incredibly powerful. So I hope it resonates with you and gives you just new insight into your own journey with God, because he's come through a lot from depression, abuse, and I think a lot of people who hear his story can see themselves in it, can kind of hear their own story and make sense of it. So all that to say, I hope you really enjoy it and that God speaks to you this week. Love you lots. So we are in a series right now titled Lent at the Table. It is, of course, the season of Lent in the Christian calendar. And Lent is basically just a season of spiritual preparation as we approach Good Friday, the day of the cross, and then after that, Easter. So it's 40 days, not including Sundays, kind of leading into that. So, we'll be a lot in the Gospels, and specifically the Gospel of Luke in this series, since that's kind of the prescribed readings. I'm jumping on the United Methodist Church, their calendar, so I just preach on whatever that is, whatever it says. And I found that it's a good discipline, like we've talked about in the past. We'll do kind of different types of series. We'll do like topical series on, just things that feel relevant or timely or needed. Other times we'll go through like a book of the Bible, like we've been doing with 1 Peter, which we'll come back to at some point. And then other times we just jump on the church calendar and join in. I like doing that because it's a cool way of joining in with the broader church. It's good to remember it's not like just about us. Or our little community, and we kind of have our own way. It's good, I think, to remember, like, hey, we are part of the church universal. And so at any rate, that's kind of what we're doing in this series. So the title of my message tonight is Fox and the Hen, not the Hound. Fox and the Hen. And it was the weirdest timing, though. This week, I'd go in the living room, and my nephew, he's watching Fox and the Hound, and I was like, my gosh, I haven't seen this in like 20 years, and on this very Sunday, there it is. Like, I don't know, the universe is a strange place. So Fox and the Hen, and our primary text is going to be Luke chapter 13, verses 31 through 34. Usually I'll just kind of like read the whole thing, and then we'll kind of go into it, but we're going to kind of take it just verse by verse and kind of unpack it as we go, as the story unfolds, so to speak. So let's start with verse 31 here. At that time, some Pharisees came to Jesus and said to him, "Leave this place and go somewhere else. Herod wants to kill you." So it's interesting that the Pharisees are saying this to Jesus. If you have ever read any of the Gospels, like the Pharisees are almost always the antagonists. If Jesus is the protagonist and the hero of the story, then the Pharisees are like, always kind of trying to trip him up, catch him in his words, set some verbal trap or something. And so it's a little strange here. We have the Pharisees, trying to like help Jesus. So, scholars speculate like maybe they're being tricksy. Maybe somehow they want to actually I don't know. It's a little strange. It's possible, though, that there are just some Pharisees that were inclined to like or help Jesus. We know just a few chapters before this, Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist, has been executed by Herod. So, maybe they are. Maybe they actually are genuine. Maybe we honestly don't totally know. But regardless, Jesus has quite the response. Jesus replied, verse 32, "Go tell that fox, I will keep on driving out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and on the third day I will reach my goal. In any case, I must press on today and tomorrow and the next day, for surely no prophet can die outside Jerusalem." So, all right, so two questions I think naturally come to mind at this point. Number one, who is Herod? And why does Jesus call him a fox? So, which, by the way, I take it not as a compliment. Maybe today, I don't know if that's still a compliment. Like, I don't know, a fox. It's like handsome, I guess. I don't know. But that's not what Jesus doesn't mean it that way. But all right, let's talk about Herod first. So who is this Herod guy? So basically, Herod was a puppet king puppet kind of a ruler of the province. Basically, when Rome conquered the Jewish people in the city of Jerusalem, they put their people in place. Sort of like imagine if, God forbid, Putin's successful in Ukraine, right? Then they may even still call it Ukraine, or at least leave the city with its name, and yet he was going to put his person in charge, right? And that's kind of this situation here. It's sort of like Rome conquered, and so they choose someone who, I think, if I recall, Herod was like half Jewish. So he's sort of, he's kind of trying to walk the line of like, oh, I'm for the people and for Rome, So of course the Jewish people, they weren't not fans of Herod. He was also known as quite a brutal ruler and quite cunning, which is why actually, Jesus calls him a fox. It's interesting. When I think of like a king, though, I kind of think more like lion. Like why not the lion, the tiger, the wolf? Power. These are symbols of power. And I think it's because foxes they're crafty. Like that's what foxes are known for. Like they're predatory, just like lions or wolves or other things. But foxes, man, they're intelligent. I think this makes them a very good kind of animal analogy or kind of metaphor for human beings. Right? Because we aren't necessarily known for like our physical just prowess, at least compared to like in the animal kingdom. Us against a great white shark in the water, not gonna be awesome, for us. But what sets us apart kind of in the animal kingdom, it's those intelligence, right? So you got foxes are smart, humans are smart. And not just smart, but foxes are sly. Humans can be sly, and foxes can be, they're predators, right? And humans at our worst, we can be quite predatory. So I think when I say predatory, what I mean is to kind of stretch that analogy. I'm getting at the idea that we don't, kind of like foxes, they're sneaky. I've been watching a series on Netflix. Some of you all have probably seen it, Alone. Anyone following the series Alone? If not, you should. It's amazing. Just people out in the wilderness, literally alone, trying to make it. And of course, foxes. Foxes are like an issue. And those foxes, they're smart. They're smart and they're stealing stuff, and but they're always sneaky, because foxes aren't the most powerful. They're not bears just lumbering around like, I'll do what I want out here, like that's not foxes. They got to be sly, and that's I think kind of how we humans are. Like we rarely, especially at least as adults, this is why we sort of adore children and they drive us crazy, but kids are just open and honest about everything. You know what I mean? Just like, if they're going to sin, they're just going to be like, hey, here it is, And humans, as adults, we're sneaky. It's like we're going to mess things up, or we're going to kind of act in those, kind of the worst parts of us. We're going to probably be, kind of sly about it. And I think it's interesting how even, we'll often distance ourselves from politicians, Like, when talking about politicians, it's almost everyone kind of despises it. It's just like, oh, you can't trust them. Which is always kind of a red flag, like whenever there's a person or a group of persons that we're kind of distancing ourselves from with a lot of emotion. Usually, what is it? We kind of see like the worst parts of us in them. And that's why we're so strong to I can't believe those politicians. Can you believe those liars? Like manipulative, conniving, sneaky. And it's like, yeah, at our worst, aren't we kind of fox-like? Isn't that kind of aren't we at least more than a touch of politician in all of us adults? I think Jesus is. I think he's onto something here. There's a great scene in The Dark Knight where, if you've seen it, you won't forget it. It's where the Joker is talking to Harvey Dent, who was a politician, and he's there. Harvey's now been injured, and he's got half his face hurt, and he's there in the hospital bed, and the Joker's has this little speech with him. And what does he say? He's like, oh, that's right. The Joker goes to Harvey, kind of leaning over. You can see it in this image. He's like leaning over him, and he says, you know what I am? He says, I'm a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I caught it. And you can see here the Joker is sort of a symbol of chaos and anarchy in the whole movie. He's almost inhuman, not human in that way. he says that, that's me. Like, I'm just a dog chasing cars. He says, I just do things. And he says, but the mob has plans. Y'all remember this scene? The mob has plans. The cops have plans. Gordon, the chief of police, he's got plans. You know what they are, Harvey? He says, they're schemers. They're schemers trying to control their little worlds. I'm just trying to show the schemers how pathetic their attempts to control things really are. Isn't that powerful? Now in this moment, and actually then he gets personal. And he says, well, not only it was the schemers who put you where you are, Harvey, but then he says, and you were a schemer. You had plans. And look where that got you. In this moment, what is that character? What's the Joker? What's he naming? He's naming humanity's fox-like ways. He's got us. Which is why the Joker's different, because he doesn't have plans. He's just chaotic. But we're not chaotic. Now, here's the thing. My point tonight isn't so much just to talk about us, though, in our, all of our fox-like ways. What I really want to name is that while humanity is fox-like, God is not. While humanity may be fox-like, God is not. In other words, God is not violent or conniving or manipulative. God is not a schemer. And now there may be verses in the Bible where God is named or imaged in those ways. For sure, you can certainly find them. But I think what's happening in those passages is actually it's human beings projecting our own fox-like ways onto God. It's us justifying ourselves. But you see, to be Christian is not to just read the Bible as a flat text. It is to interpret it in a very specific way, and specifically to understand who God is in a specific way. It is, we take every verse, every image of God that's given, and we kind of interpret it through the life, the teachings, the character, the very revelation of who God is that we see in the face of Jesus Christ. That's what it means to be a Christian. So humanity may be fox-like. God is not. And this is why what you get in this next verse is this moment where Jesus, it's one of the most tender, beautiful images of God that we have in the entire Bible. So remember, he just finished saying, go tell that fox, I'm going to keep on healing people. I'm going to keep on setting people free from the demonic, and I'm going to keep on doing the work that God's called me to do. And then he says, because I'm headed towards Jerusalem, because no prophet can die outside Jerusalem. And then as though that word Jerusalem kind of triggers Jesus' memory, all of a sudden he starts lamenting. This is verse 34. He says, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and you stone those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. And you were not willing." Isn't that a stunning image? This is who Jesus reveals God to be. It's a picture, it's a very maternal, mother-like image, isn't it? This is who God is. Sometimes when I read the scriptures, I'll imagine it kind of playing out like a movie. I think one of the more stunning things about this passage, remember he just finished talking about Jerusalem, and he even talks about going there to die, and we know how he's going to die. And when I see this play out, I imagine Jesus as he's saying, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, I've longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings." Can you see the image? I just imagine him, what's he doing with his hands? Can you kind of see it? Like, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, I've longed to just gather you together. What's it a picture of? It's this picture of the cross as he stretches out his arms wide on a cross to die for who? For us, for his children, to bring us back into relationship, back into intimacy, back into connectedness. This is who God is. Humanity may be fox-like. God is not. God is not. Now, of course, what's a little bit tricky is that depending on the context in which you were raised, depending on your church context, how you were raised in the culture, maybe even a totally different religious context, who knows? But depending on those contexts, the way we image God can be quite different, can honestly at times be quite fox-like. And so this becomes somewhat of a transition, a journey for us to let go of those untrue images of God and to bring ourselves back to the truth. And really, it's sort of a journey of trust, learning to trust that God really is, as a theologian, Tripp Fuller, he said one of his theological kind of principles or absolutes is God has to be at least as nice as Jesus. I think that's a really good way to put it. That's one of my rules. God has to be at least as nice as Jesus. And I think for a lot of us, it's a journey to get there to really trust at that level. And so what I thought might be helpful tonight is to hear someone else's story about their own kind of journey, their own struggles with their images of themselves, of others, of God, and then just what kind of the journey that God's taken them on. So if you will give a warm welcome for my friend Eric Stinnerson. Y'all give him a hand. The table zone, Eric. Thank you. I'm going to grab my phone with a timer because otherwise, who knows how long. All right. Eric, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes. So let's kind of start, we'll start towards the beginning. Can you maybe just share with us some of your background? You've been through some really dark times in your life, and just kind of give us some context, share some of what you've been through to help us, get a snapshot of who is Eric.
My journey begins in January of '79 when I was born in Duluth, Minnesota. My birth mother put me up for adoption, and I was known as Baby Jeremy. I was not known as Eric at the time. And I was adopted in late summer of that year by my parents. However, I never knew my parents married because they divorced in 1980. So growing up, I struggled with rejection and the fact that, did I break up the marriage or was it something else? I know I've been told it's not, but And at the end of 6th grade, I was diagnosed with social anxiety disorder and was forced to move to Duluth with my father. My mom and I lived in Mankato, Minnesota, so 2.5 hours south of Minneapolis. And I continued through high school, moved back to Mankato for college, and basically lived alone, but however struggled with what became bipolar disorder in full by my 20s. And during that time, I tried to take my life twice during my 20s and 30s. I relied heavily on alcohol and abused my prescription drugs greatly in order to get the high that I wanted and to drown out my sorrows. But I thought it was all over with when I met my husband, Brandon, in New Year's Eve of 17-18. And I thought, now I had someone to walk with in this world, and this is my first relationship, and it was going to be great. And I put everything into it that I had. However, I unfortunately did not know the difference between a good relationship and a toxic relationship because it was my first. And after 2.5 years, I was pulled out of that relationship by my family in August of 2020 and moved here to Texas. They lived in Royce City and I moved to Greenville. And however, just didn't quite get back on the path that I wanted to. And so November 1st of 2020, I took my life for a third time. And I ended up in Glen Oaks Hospital. And, I vowed when that door shut behind me 5 days later, and I walked out, that it would never happen again. And so in January of 21, seems January is a kind of a new start, new year, everything. I met William, and who I'm with today, and that is by far an absolute true relationship. And a loving relationship built on truth and honesty, and not something that's hidden behind closed doors. So here we are, and obviously the table came in October of 21, and so I think, there's a lot left out in there because I'm 43 years old, but I think everybody can understand that it's been a struggle. And unfortunately, even with William, it's not a smooth path. There have been some struggles and some bumps along the way, and I think that, however, he understands and does not judge. Just like God does not judge, neither does he. So.
Yeah. Josh, I'm hearing feedback. Does he need to use my mic? Is it okay? Okay, cool. So we've exchanged a number of emails.
Yes.
And as Eric's kind of shared his story with me, which has been incredibly encouraging and insightful. And in one of the emails you said, God created me, but I've spent 42 years trying to cover up and change that. Can you kind of unpack that? What is that, the covering up, the changing that, and then how has that, kind of impacted your relationship to God?
Growing up, obviously, I did not come out as being gay until I married Brandon, because obviously that's kind of there's nothing to hide behind anymore after that. So for the first 38 years, nobody knew besides me. I mean, not my parents, not my friends. I mean, I'm sure people had inklings that, hey, he doesn't get married to a woman, doesn't have any, buddy living with him. And so I didn't want to be who I was, who God created me to be. And so that just ended up becoming the way it was going to be. And then, like I said, I thought I had found that person to walk with, and unfortunately did not. But now I have that person. So now I can be who I want to be, or who I am. And being in a place like this, the table, just solidifies that there are people here on earth that care, love, and don't judge as well, just like William does not, and God does not. So, and that really changes who I am, and who I can be myself, and tell this story, because I'm not embarrassed by it, because it's truly who I am, and there's nothing to hide behind. So,
yeah, that kind of ties in with the third question, which is, the past few months, you've really started to turn some corners and are on a better path, whether it's kind of maturing and deepening your relationship with William. You mentioned finding the table. There's been kind of a number of things. I wondered if you could kind of be or name what's been helpful, what's been kind of setting you free, and specifically what's been helping you kind of heal some of that wound, in yourself, between you and God. Yeah.
I think I kind of missed the God part in the second question there, but I felt like I could do it myself. Through my 20s and 30s, sorry, I felt like I didn't need to walk with God on a daily basis, because I had my alcohol, I had my drugs, I didn't need anybody to be walking beside me. I was fine on my own. I'm strong enough. I don't need anything else. And and if it hurts too bad, then I can just be done. And so now that God has, I think, placed William, the table, a steady job, everything in my life, that's just been my relationship has become stronger by far, and I know that he has done that for me. He knows what's coming next, and he understands that on November 1st, 2020, he wasn't ready to call me home yet. I was ready, but he wasn't. So here I am, and I think that it's changed exactly who I am and who I want to become, and be more like Jesus every day. But I understand that I'm also human, and it's not going to be just always a walk in the park. There's going to be stumbles, but if you have God and a significant other to lean on, you will make it. And that's what the difference is between when you reject God and then or invite him in to be your pillar in life. That verse, Luke 13:34, I was not willing at the time, and now, yes, I want to be included in the God's world and God's creation. So
Awesome. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Y'all give him a hand. Yeah, Jesse, you can help me grab these. Thank you. Isn't God good? I love, Eric, I appreciate you sharing. It takes a lot of vulnerability to be up here. But I just love hearing what God's up to and the way it's like God knows exactly what needs to be healed within each of us, in relationship, like to ourselves, to others, to him. Sometimes they're images of him, but like it's just such a good work. So thank you for sharing. And I did want to return to that phrase that Jesus uses there towards the end about, and you were not willing. That's the end of the passage. And you were not willing. You can hear almost the heartbreak in it. And what I love in Eric's story is what he named that transition from that distance and like, I'm going to figure this out on my own, which wasn't working so well. And then this sense of surrender and openness to God, like, God, okay, I'm willing. And not that, like Eric mentioned, not that you snap your fingers and everything is magically solved in my life and I have no more problems. Not that, but I'm on the path towards wholeness. I'm taking steps every day towards healing. And so as we just come to this Lenten season, I guess what I want to encourage us to be is just willing. Let's be willing. Let's say yes to God and see what he has for us. I want to pray for you, and then I'm going to transition over to communion. Lord Jesus, thank you that you are a good mother to us. Thank you that you offer us safety, stability, warmth, and comfort. I lift up every person who is desperately in need of those things. If that's you tonight, I want to invite you to just open up your palms on your lap in a posture of just receiving from God. God, may your children receive your love. May our images of you be healed. May we stop projecting our fox-like ways onto you. May every false image of you planted by the enemy be banished. And may we be filled with your life and light. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.